Hi everybody, Dave Moraine back with another video in April of 2010. And this is what potentially could be an SAT high-level problem or other standardized test question, or perhaps the SAT subject tests, Math 1 or Math 2. But more importantly than where a question like this might appear is, how do you think your students in Algebra 2 or Precalculus or higher would perform on this type of question? And what can one learn from this? Well, for me, from my own personal experience, what I learned early on is that questions that students were not used to seeing, that look different from what they've seen for homework or in textbooks or on worksheets, this equation right here, that requires conceptual understanding, thinking outside the box, putting it all together. This type of question, the p-value is pretty low. Without statistics, what that means is kids don't perform well. Honors, regular, advanced, doesn't make any difference. But I'd like you to predict how you think your students would do, and then try it in your Algebra 2 honors or your pre-cal classes or even your AP classes, just for the heck of it. Anyway, it's multiple choice. It could be in many different forms. I did develop this question myself. Certainly it's easy to make up that equation. The choices and the format of the question took more time for me to contrive or derive, or devise, I should say. Look it over. Now we're going to begin. Which choice do you think many students would choose? At least those who don't give up on the question. And by the way, this question would be placed near the end of an SAT math section, and perhaps some of you would think this is too hard for the SATs, but I think it's a reasonable question of level 5. You can listen to my dogs in the background barking. Anyway, what choice do you think most would pick? My guess would be C, one line. And this is for students who are pretty good in math, who don't simply skip the question. In fact, the answer is D, 2 lines. What is the number one stumbling block in this, other than the fact that they're not used to seeing this equation? Well, in my opinion, it's the age-old problem from Algebra 1 on of canceling variables. And for the middle school student, the pre-algebra student, the Algebra 1 student, I always give them a problem like this. What's the answer? What's the solution to that equation? You'd be amazed at how many students would say the empty set or no solution, or they just get something like what? 3 equals 2? So what's the proper way of solving this? Well, regardless of the proper way of solving it, what are good instructional strategies for students to help students learn conceptually? First, the verbal. You know that rule of 4, multi-representation, many representations. 3 times, you do it in words. 3 times a number equals 2 times the same number. Sure. I know it's sloppy, but you got the idea. I think this is very powerful. Before we talk about procedure, we want the students to be able to verbalize or to understand the source. What would this equation look like in application or in context? and then ask them to discuss that. How can 3 times a number equal 2 times the same number? Ah, 0, the most important number in mathematics, in my opinion, of course. Anyway, and 0 is the whole point of this problem, because dividing out by a variable means you may be dividing out by 0, which, as we learn, loses or can lose a solution. This is an illegal operation, dividing by 0, and now we know why. Because that produces 3 equals 2, and we do not get the correct solution. The obvious is often overlooked. So we ask our students, what's a legal operation we could perform on both sides of this equation? It just has to be said, folks. So the solution is 0. All right, coming back to this, not going to get into the verbal representation. So the proper procedure is that y times x minus 4 equals 0, y equals 0, x equals 4, y equals 0 is your x-axis, y equals 0, sloppy, 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 and x equals 4 is the vertical line. So the graph consists of 2 lines. E seems to be also a correct answer, but I'm sure you realize that 4 right angles are formed. An angle is defined to be the union of 2 rays with a common vertex. We're dealing with lines here, not rays. So this is just a distractor. 1 line, of course, the students who cancel the y's and get x equals 4. 1 point, x equals 4 sounds like a single number on the number line, yes, but this said in the coordinate plane. 2 points, the same reasoning if they were actually able to get to y equals 0 and x equals 4. But if they got there, they should have gotten the right answer. So the answer is D, 2 lines. Now we could go further with this and come up with similar types of problems to help students get it. They need to see several of these to be able to perform at the highest level on a standardized test, but more importantly, to understand mathematics at a more than superficial level. We have to get beyond procedures. NCTM has said that for 20 years, balancing concepts with procedures, but teachers know how hard it is to ask the right questions, to get students to engage, to have students attempt this. Multiple choice is one way, because when students see multiple choice, they're more likely to try the question. From an advanced point of view, what can we actually say about the equation with an xy term? What is the graph in general of that? Well, this is like a quadratic equation in 2 variables, ax squared plus bxy plus cy squared plus dx plus ey plus f. Some of the students in pre-calc know from b squared minus 4ac. In this case, we would get 1, because b is 1, and in that case, we'd get a hyperbola. But the graph doesn't look like hyperbola. It looks like 2 lines. This is called the degenerate hyperbola, in which the hyperbola collapses to its asymptotes. We could go further with that as well, and I won't at this point, because I really wanted to keep this at a basic fundamental level for middle school students, Algebra 1 students, Algebra 2, and so on. And more importantly, why are these questions important? And if the SAT problem is just a vehicle to get at meaning and understanding, then it has value. And if you don't think this is an SAT question, that's okay.